Now let's apply what we've learned about fruit structure to a fruit that many of you may not have encountered before, breadfruit. Breadfruit is widely known in tropical regions such as the Pacific Islands, Hawaii, the Caribbean, and parts of Southeast Asia. In many of these areas, it serves as an important staple food. What makes breadfruit especially interesting botanically is that it is classified as a multiple fruit, meaning the fruit develops from many individual flowers that fuse together into one structure. In this case study, we'll look at how the structure of the fruit relates to how people actually prepare it as food. Leilani lives in Hawaii, where breadfruit is a common ingredient in many traditional dishes. When preparing breadfruit, she first cuts the fruit in half and removes the thick outer rind. She then slices the fruit into wedges and trims away the fibrous central core. Some varieties of breadfruit may contain seeds, so she checks for those and removes them if necessary. Finally, she cuts the remaining flesh into chunks and roasts them until they become soft and slightly golden. Unlike fruits such as grapes or strawberries that are usually eaten raw, breadfruit is typically cooked before it is eaten, and its texture becomes somewhat similar to potatoes when roasted. As you think about this preparation process, consider how the botanical structure of the fruit might explain why certain parts are removed. Before we return to the case study, let's take a moment to look at the structure of breadfruit. Breadfruit is classified as a multiple fruit, meaning the fruit develops from many individual flowers that grow together and fuse into a single fruit structure. If this sounds familiar, it should. Pineapple develops the same way. In both pineapple and breadfruit, many flowers from an inflorescence fuse together to form one large fruit. The outer rind forms the protective skin of the fruit. This is the thick layer that Leilani removes when preparing breadfruit. Most of the edible portion comes from the tissues of the fused flowers. In the center of the fruit is the central core, which represents the main axis of the inflorescence, where the individual flowers were originally attached. Because this structure provides support for the developing fruit, it tends to be tougher and more fibrous than the surrounding tissue. Some breadfruit varieties also contain seeds, which develop from the ovules of the individual flowers. However, many cultivated breadfruit varieties are seedless, which makes them easier to prepare and eat. So just like pineapple, breadfruit is a great example of how many flowers can fuse together to form a single fruit structure. Answer these reflection questions. For the first question, remember that breadfruit is a multiple fruit, meaning it forms from many flowers that fuse together during development. Because of this origin, the internal structure of the fruit reflects the arrangement of those flowers within the inflorescence. For the second question, think about the central core of the fruit. This structure represents the main axis of the inflorescence, where the individual flowers were originally attached. Since it provides structural support for the developing fruit, this tissue is usually firmer and more fibrous than the surrounding edible tissue. Finally, consider why breadfruit is often roasted or baked. The flesh of the fruit contains large amounts of starch, and cooking helps soften the tissues and convert the starches into a texture that is easier and more pleasant to eat. Let's step back for a moment and look at the big picture. In this lab, you examine many different fruit types: fleshy fruits, dry fruits, simple fruits, aggregate fruits, and multiple fruits. Breadfruit is a great example of how fruit structure reflects how the fruit develops. Because breadfruit forms from many flowers fused together, its internal structure includes tissues from an entire inflorescence. This is the same developmental pattern we see in pineapple and jackfruit, which are also multiple fruit. Understanding fruit structure doesn't just help us understand plant reproduction. It also explains how fruits are prepared, eaten, and used as food. So when you look at a fruit, whether it's a tomato, strawberry, pineapple, or breadfruit, you're really looking at the result of a flower's reproductive structures developing into a seed dispersal system. That connection between plant structure, plant reproduction, and the foods we eat is one of the most fascinating parts of studying plant biology.